In the next few minutes, the sun dipped low over the rolling hills of North Carolina, bathing the landscape in hues of orange and purple. Jack Callahan sat on the porch of his modest cabin, sipping coffee and soaking in the tranquil view. At his side, Emily, his wife, handed him another steaming mug with a smile that lit up her face. To anyone passing by, Jack seemed like an ordinary man leading an uneventful life. The locals in the small town nearby only knew him as the quiet, polite neighbor who rarely joined the community barbecues. They had no idea that he was once among the most dangerous operatives in the U.S. military. Jack had served on classified missions across the globe, earning commendations for valor that few could match. But that life was behind him now, or so he thought. That night, as the forest around them settled into silence, a sharp knock shattered the calm. Jack's instincts flared. He reached for the pistol tucked beneath the couch cushion, signaling Emily to stay quiet. When he opened the door, what he faced was no friendly visitor. A group of masked men forced their way inside. Before Jack could react, one restrained him while another seized Emily. Despite his resistance, the attackers came prepared. A jolt from a taser dropped him to the floor, his vision fading as he watched them drag Emily into the night. "Move a muscle and she's gone for good," one of the men muttered before disappearing into the darkness. Jack woke to an empty cabin, his body trembling from the electric shock, but his mind, sharper than ever. He knew this wasn't random. They had chosen him specifically. What they didn't realize was who they were up against. As he pieced together what little evidence they left behind, Jack felt his old training kick in. Every step, every breath was calculated. He unearthed his emergency gear, tools he swore he'd never use again, a battered map, a shortwave radio, and an arsenal hidden beneath the floorboards became his lifeline. The cabin, once a sanctuary, now felt like a command center for the war he was about to wage. Jack's pursuit revealed more than he expected. A name tied to his past, a shadowy organization seeking retribution for events long buried. His mission to rescue Emily wasn't just about facing armed adversaries. It was about confronting the ghosts of his former life. Jack moved with the precision of a predator, his every action deliberate and silent. He scanned the footprints outside his cabin, barely visible in the moonlight, then knelt to inspect a scrap of black fabric snagged on the porch railing. His mind raced, connecting the dots. The men who took Emily underestimated him. That mistake would cost them. His first stop was a nearby diner, a known gathering spot for truckers and night owls. He slipped inside, blending into the small crowd of regulars. At the counter, he struck up a casual conversation with a grizzled trucker nursing a coffee. "Seen anything unusual on the road tonight?" Jack asked, his voice calm but edged with urgency. The trucker hesitated. "Now that you mention it, saw a van tearing down the highway, no plates, about an hour ago, headed toward the old mill." It wasn't much, but it was a start. Jack nodded his thanks and left a generous tip before slipping out the door. He could feel the clock ticking. The old mill was a relic of the town's industrial past, abandoned for decades. Jack approached cautiously, his footsteps muffled by the forest floor. He surveyed the structure, spotting faint light leaking through a broken window. Jack's military instincts kicked in. He moved low and quiet, circling the building to assess the situation. Through the grime-covered glass, he spotted 3 men inside, armed but distracted. A laptop on a makeshift table displayed surveillance feeds. They weren't amateurs. He strained to listen. "Delivery's scheduled for tomorrow," one of the men said, his tone smug. "Boss says she's leverage. They'll pay." Jack's fists clenched. These men thought Emily was a pawn in their game. They had no idea they were playing against someone who'd been trained to dismantle enemies like them. Jack waited for the right moment, then struck with surgical precision. His first target never saw it coming, a swift strike to the temple with the butt of his pistol. Before the others could react, Jack moved like a shadow, taking down the second man with a chokehold that left him unconscious. The third man panicked, fumbling for his weapon. Jack disarmed him with a brutal efficiency that left the thug gasping on the floor. "You've got 10 seconds to tell me where she is," Jack growled, pressing the cold barrel of his pistol against the man's forehead. "Boss has her at the safe house," the man stammered. "A warehouse near the docks." Jack didn't hesitate. He knocked the man out and destroyed the surveillance equipment before slipping into the night. The warehouse by the docks was anything but subtle. Security lights illuminated the perimeter, and 2 armed guards patrolled outside. Jack observed them from a distance, memorizing their patterns. He had no backup, no margin for error. This had to be perfect. He created a diversion, tossing a rock to draw one guard away. The moment the man turned, Jack struck, silencing him with a swift blow. The second guard was no match for him either, dropping without a sound. Inside, the air was heavy with the scent of oil and rust. Jack moved carefully, his eyes scanning every corner for traps. Then he saw her, Emily, tied to a chair in the center of the room. Relief flooded him, but he kept his composure. There were still threats to eliminate. Before Jack could reach Emily, the boss stepped out of the shadows, a smug grin on his face. "Callahan," the man drawled, "I should have known you'd come. Too bad you won't leave." The boss signaled, and 3 more men emerged from hiding, guns drawn. Jack's mind raced. He had faced worse odds before, but this was different. Emily's life was on the line. He acted without hesitation. Ducking behind a stack of crates, Jack returned fire with deadly precision. The room erupted in chaos as bullets ricocheted off metal surfaces. One by one, his enemies fell, their arrogance no match for his expertise. Finally, it was just Jack and the boss. The man tried to bargain, but Jack wasn't interested. With a single, decisive move, he disarmed the boss and pinned him to the ground. "You messed with the wrong man," Jack hissed before delivering a knockout blow. Emily was shaken but unharmed. Jack untied her, his hands trembling as he pulled her into an embrace. "I knew you'd come," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "It's over," Jack said, though a part of him knew it wasn't. Men like the boss didn't operate alone. This was just the beginning of a larger battle. As they walked out of the warehouse together, Jack vowed to protect Emily at all costs. No matter what shadows from his past came for him, he would be ready. The warehouse burned behind them, flames licking the night sky as Jack drove Emily to a safe house far outside the city. They didn't speak much during the ride. Emily, exhausted, leaned against the window, her expression a mix of fear and relief. Jack's mind churned with questions. Who were these people? Why her? And how far would they go to strike at him? At the safe house, a secluded cabin Jack once used during covert operations, he laid out basic supplies and secured the perimeter. Emily watched him silently, her eyes searching his face for answers. "Jack," she finally said, her voice trembling, "why did they come after you? What's going on?" Jack hesitated. He'd always kept his past buried, even from her. But now there was no avoiding the truth. "Years ago," he began, his voice low, "I led a mission overseas. We dismantled a network of arms dealers, but not without casualties. The man running it, he had ties to something bigger, something deeper. I thought we buried them all. Clearly, I was wrong." Emily's hand covered her mouth. "So, this is about revenge?" "Not just revenge," Jack said grimly. "It's leverage. They don't just want me. They want what I know." Back in a dimly lit conference room halfway across the country, a man in a tailored suit sat at the head of a long table. He tapped his fingers rhythmically, staring at a monitor displaying security footage from the docks. The screen froze on Jack's face as he dismantled one of his men with cold precision. "Callahan," the man muttered, his tone a mix of annoyance and admiration. He's a ghost that refuses to stay buried. One of his subordinates cleared his throat nervously. "Sir, should we proceed with the secondary plan?" The man smirked. "No need. Callahan will come to us. He always does." Jack spent the next day combing through every detail from the warehouse. The scraps of documents, encrypted drives, and untraceable phones he'd gathered. One name kept appearing: the Phoenix Group, a clandestine organization that thrived in the shadows, dealing in arms, information, and power. Jack's contacts in the intelligence community had warned him about groups like this, but seeing their reach firsthand was different. He reached out to an old ally, someone he trusted, a former hacker turned cybersecurity expert named Riley. Riley's voice crackled through the secure line. "Jack, you're playing with fire. The Phoenix Group doesn't just disappear when you hit them. They hit back harder." "I don't care," Jack said firmly. "They have Emily in their sights. I need to know everything: locations, operatives, weak points." There was a pause. "Fine, but when this is over, you owe me more than just a beer." Armed with Riley's intel, Jack planned his next move. The Phoenix Group's operations spread like a spiderweb, but their nerve center, a heavily guarded estate in the heart of a major city, was the obvious target. It wouldn't be easy, but Jack had no other choice. Under the cover of darkness, Jack infiltrated the estate, bypassing state-of-the-art security systems with Riley's remote assistance. Inside, he discovered a wealth of damning evidence: financial records, encrypted messages, and blueprints for large-scale operations. But the real shock came when he uncovered a file labeled Operation Revenant. It detailed a plan to not only eliminate Jack but use Emily as a bargaining chip to expose other high-value targets from his past missions. "Son of a B," Jack muttered under his breath. Before he could download the files, an alarm blared. The room flooded with red light. Jack darted through the labyrinthine halls of the estate as armed guards swarmed the building. His movements were calculated, but the odds were stacked against him. He used every trick in the book: decoys, smoke grenades, and sheer grit to outmaneuver his pursuers. When he reached the exit, he found himself face to face with the man from the conference room, the Phoenix Group's leader. Well, the man said, clapping slowly. "Callahan, you've certainly lived up to your reputation." Jack didn't reply. He raised his weapon, his finger hovering over the trigger. "Oh, I wouldn't do that," the man said, smirking. "You pull that trigger and Emily's safety, well, let's just say it won't be guaranteed." Jack's jaw tightened. He knew this was a ploy, but it worked. For now, the man, who introduced himself as Grayson Locke, offered Jack a deal: his life for Emily's freedom. But Jack wasn't about to play by Locke's rules. Instead, he used the brief negotiation to gather intel, subtly planting a tracker on Locke's watch. "You have 24 hours, Locke said, his tone icy. "After that, all bets are off." Jack left the estate, his mind racing. Riley's voice buzzed in his earpiece. "Jack, tell me you didn't just let that guy walk." "I didn't," Jack replied, glancing at the blinking on his phone's screen. "He's leading us right to Emily." The tracker led Jack to an underground bunker, a fortress bristling with guards and automated defenses. With Riley's guidance, he bypassed the systems and entered the heart of the operation. Inside, he found Emily, chained but unharmed. Relief and fury surged through him as he fought his way to her, dismantling the last of Locke's men. But Locke himself was waiting, armed and ready. "What's your move, Callahan?" Locke sneered. "This ends one way or another." Jack didn't hesitate. The fight was brutal, both men evenly matched, but Jack's resolve proved stronger. With a final, devastating blow, Locke was down for good. Jack and Emily emerged from the bunker as the first light of dawn broke over the horizon. For now, the nightmare was over, but Jack knew the fight wasn't finished. The Phoenix Group would come back and he'd be ready. "Let's go home," Emily said softly, leaning into him. Jack nodded. Home, he echoed, though he knew their idea of safety would never be the same.